as a leader, you have to not only have a vision, you don't only have to communicate that vision, but you have to tell people what to expect. And it's very important that as a leader, you show them the map from wherever they're starting to wherever they're trying to go. Let me walk you through what was going on in our heads and our minds as we went through this. You could come back to this video often if you're in the middle of the program and something doesn't sound right to you, to listen to our rationale and then decide, is that a good place for it or might you want to move it around? I'll explain that to you as we go through this. So when you look at the roadmap, it's a 7-step process, right? A leader's journey. That's the name of the program. The place where we had to start was at the end of the journey. We had to have that vision of what was the target or the result that we were looking for. So let's reveal that first. This program is all around transformation. It's how do we literally transform you, as we've been saying over and over again, from a manager who has been asked to lead to a leader who also manages. How do we go about doing that? Gathering all of the information and all of the experience that we've had before, all of the research we've been doing. We looked at this and we said, look, there are some things that are just flat out standard. There are some things, a certain process, a certain cadence that people have to go through if they really are on the road to transformation. And if they miss some of these steps, they could fall short. Today in business, when we lay this out for you, you're going to see some of these steps. You're going to be very familiar with them and you're going to say, wow, I see that all the time. Yes, that makes sense to me. We're also going to show you some steps where you're going to look at it and you go, well, you know, that's kind of unfamiliar. Why would you want to do that? We're going to explain that to you right now. First step of the process is to get you to be able to discover the topic that you're going to focus on. Discover. It's a discovery step. So if you're working on your own leadership, it's around self-discovery. It's about studying yourself. The purpose here is that before you do any journey, before you undertake any journey, the first thing you do is learn as much as you can about the topic that you're studying so that you get off on the right foot. If you're studying yourself and you're going through this journey looking at your personal development, it would behoove you to learn all you can about yourself. If you're trying to take your organization on a journey, it would behoove you to learn all there is to know about the organization as it exists today before you move forward. So the first piece, we called it Discover. It's a learning step. When we go into clients and we're starting an engagement with them or they call us in to talk about something, the first step for us is always to discover. What's the situation now? What do they need? What do they want to get? Why is that important to them? A high-level overview of their target. All of those kind of things will be covered in the Discover step. Step number 2 is the Prepare step. Now, I know you're looking at this and you're saying, well, wait a minute, Myron, the Discover step, isn't that the Prepare step? No, this is something very, very different. This is where not only do you discover in step number 1 the target that you're shooting for, but now you need to start to pull together the resources that you're going to use as you start to go on this journey. And even more importantly, you need to start thinking about what are some of the obstacles that could get in the way. Obstacles that I might put in that way, or obstacles that the organization and the people within it might put in that way. So this is the Prepare step, so you know fully going in. This is like your due diligence piece. If you're buying a company, you all heard of due diligence, this is your due diligence piece. Once you have that, you're moving over into the design step. Now the design step, many of you might think, okay, this is where we come up with the plan. No, not yet, not yet. See, as a leader, you need to develop a game plan, obviously, but not in this step. This is where you have to sit by yourself and say, let me get crystal clear on the target that I want to shoot for. Let me get that straight in my head. Let me bring that into my reality so that I could now start to communicate that and enlist people to help me. Help me not only to design it and pull it together in a very powerful way, but also to start to deploy it. So this is all about work that you as a leader will do. Now I want to call a quick timeout here. Coaches call timeout. This is a quick timeout. What we tended to find in organizations that we work with is that leaders, because everything is picked up, the pace is picked up, so many things are coming at you, they try to race through these first couple of steps. And what they may do is they may stop briefly at this design step to get clear on what the outcome is and what they want to have. What do I want to have, the leader might say. That's okay, because as a leader, you've got to know. But they miss the first two. So they start off on some false steps. Another thing that you have to really think about here is in the program, we're going to talk about what's expected of you as a leader. And when they're picking the top leaders, they're looking at two things. They're looking at somebody who can think strategically and then act to get results. All of this is the strategic thinking piece about the strategy, the long term. Where do we want to go? What do I want to put out there as the vision for the leader? So very critical that you spend some time on these steps. We're going to show you exactly how. Then on the next step is the align step. Now, when you hear the align step, you're probably thinking, well, wait a minute, when do I get a chance to plan? Literally, you get a chance to plan right now. This align step is about when you roll out what you want to achieve, that you came up with in the design step, to the people around you, your inner core, your core team of leaders, your leadership team, your management committee. When you sit down with them and say, hey, listen, this is the direction we need to go in. I need help in designing this now. I need some help pulling this together. And we're going to show you exactly how to be able to communicate this to your core team to get them engaged first, because these are the leaders of the organization. You got to get them on board in a hurry, and enlist them to help you create it. Let them put a brick in the wall of this creation, build the house that you guys are going to live in together. They're going to love this. So we'll show you exactly how to do that and how to come up with your game plan here, not a project plan, but your game plan. Once you have that, you're going to move on to step number 5. And step number 5 is the execute step. If you have a game plan, how do you start to roll it out? So this is crucial because there's a couple things here. How do you communicate this to the organization? How do you give the organization a roadmap going forward? How do you now start to take action against it, and how do you start to measure your results? Very important in the execute step. From there, once you've executed, at some point, you got to come off the field of play. You got to call a timeout midstream. The game's not over yet, but you call a timeout and you have to do a review. Now look what happens to the curve. Watch this, because this is really neat. And we found a graphic that portrays this. See how this thing is going up in the same direction, and then it starts to swoop back? This signifies the review step. It's literally a look back on everything that you've done so far and measuring the results and say, are we getting the results we hope for? Is this thing working out, or do we need to make a mid-course correction? Not only that, how are we going to go about it? Don't worry about it. We're going to show you all of that in that 6th step. Once you go through there and you have started to execute the plan or even completed the execution of the plan, the 7th step is, all right, not only what did we learn, but how do we integrate this into literally everything we're doing and cause this to become the way we do business here? Now, the beautiful part about this is when you go through the integration, these steps are always going to stay the same. They're the same whether you're working on your personal development, whether you're working on team development, organizational development, business development, it doesn't matter. It's the same steps along the process. So if you're able to do that, you go through it the first time. Here's the idea. Let me give you the idea. We all learned how to drive. At least almost all of us watching this video will have learned how to drive. I want you to think about the day you sat behind the wheel when you had your learner's permit. You were first behind the wheel and you were going to drive it. When you got in there, think about how you felt inside. You were very scared, right? Because you never drove this thing before. You thought, in your head, you could drive this thing, like one hand going down the highway, arm out the window, right? Until you get behind the wheel. Now you're like, whoo. And everything became very mechanical. How you put it in reverse, how you looked in all the mirrors and how you looked around, how you were driving down the road very tentatively, your foot on the gas and the brake, back and forth. You weren't going very fast because you had to build up the experience. But think about the way you drive today. It's almost you're going through the drive without even thinking about it. Many of you get in the car and you drive to work, and there's a few days where you get there and you go, wait a minute, I don't even remember how I got here. You had other things going on in your mind, right? Your subconscious took over. That's what's going to happen to you with this program. Once you go through it the first time, when you go back through it the second time, you're going to go through it a whole lot faster. When you go through it the third time, you're going to go through this thing in lightning speed. And when you go through it the fourth time, you're going to stand back and you're already going to know where you already have some of these already done and lined up. So now you're going to pick the pieces that you don't have. Always, though, always getting crystal clear about the discovery piece. So when you're rolling it out, here's what we learned, right? That's a great phrase. Always clear about the prepared step. This is what it's going to take, or what we're going to take with us. Always clear about the design step. This is my vision for where we want to go. Always clear on, how did we put this plan together? Always clear about how do we enlist people in this program? How do we enlist them for their reasons? How do we get them to enlist in our cause, the outcome that we're shooting for? Always a review step and always an integration step. And after action review, what did we learn? How do we take what we're doing to the next level? So please, I'm hoping that you come back to this early and often. I can tell you a couple of places where people slip up. As they're going through it, do they do the design? Yeah, but you know what? That's more like a plan. Do they do this align? Maybe. Do they do the execute? Of course they do. That's a big, huge yes, right? The design might be a maybe here for some of the leaders. Do they do the review? I'm telling you right now, most of you out there, most of you, that's going to be a big no. Is there an integration? For most of you, not all, but for most of you, that's going to be a big no. You don't want to know why? Because the people in your organization go, okay, this is another flavor of the month. We did that. Okay, bring on the next process. Let's get going again. Guess what? It's the same 7 steps. So if you can learn this one time, you could use this over and over and over again with any issue that you're trying to work on. I don't care whether it's personal or whether it's business. You will now have the roadmap to help you transform where you start and where you want to go. For right now, this is Myron Radio. Over and out.